It's 2024, it's time to shake things up a little bit. This was the self-sufficiency garden, well, always will be, but I'm kind of transitioning it into my kitchen garden. And so putting in a couple of Vigo garden beds, shifting out a bit of the layout, I'll be showing this over time. Now, this small garden is part of our wider project, which I'm now doubling down on permaculture. And this year is going to consist of a huge amount of digging. And it's a lot of digging because we've got hundreds of perennials to put in. So many fun, exciting things, a real kind of shift in how we're looking at managing the site and thinking about the long-term goals and the benefits. And I thought, let's make a video showing you all of the things that are going to be happening. It's crazy to think that this site is now entering its third year. So this time 3 years ago, this whole place was just a field. And there's been a few different transitions over that time. And now very much it's looking at how I can bring all of the different elements together to look at this whole site through the lens of permaculture design, to make sure that it's put into different zones, to make sure that everything benefits one another, and kind of to really knuckle down and use this as a bit of this kind of like creative canvas just to see what happens. And my initial ideas with growing like loads of annuals, especially on the terraces and stuff, that takes a lot of time. Not everybody has got time to weed around annual crops, which is, it's a little bit demoralizing. One of the things that I'm thinking about is management. How can I make the biggest impact for the least amount of time? And so that's where perennials are going to come into the equation. So it's using a lot of things like here, starting to create a bit more linear food forests. I really believe in the linearity, yes, the linearity of food forests to maximize light, to maximize productivity, but also to add lots of visual interest rather than blocking it up into blocks and sections, is to utilize curves, utilize edges, so we can carry the visual sight through. And this part behind me was this like little mini garden. This becomes Neil's allotment.
Well, we've taken out the raised beds and making more of an open space in the middle there.
Why do you want an open space?
Because I'm exploring more with polycultures.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, that's very permaculture of you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I just read a book by Alice Fowler, and it's really good. And she's talking about kind of like the different levels in a food forest, but how you work that in a kitchen garden.
Wow.
And yeah, it's quite cool. So I'm taking a few tips from her and a few from, there's a book called The Edible Flower Garden.
Right.
And I can't remember the author, but maybe we can
we'll
put that in the notes.
Pop it up.
Yeah. And a few other sources, and just mixing it all together and see what happens, really.
Is it right if we kind of like come back and see how it's going over the years?
Please do, yeah. And inside the polytunnel there, I'm doing a seed saving course this year, and I'm going to be growing aubergines for
eggplants.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
That's it,
yes.
yeah.
One of the new additions is we now have a shed, which is an absolute luxury. One of the best benefits of that is we open up more polytunnel space. I'll be covering one of the things that we're going to be doing in one of the polytunnels shortly. And so we're changing around this corner, and the idea now, we've opened up this nice little space, and the idea is to create some kind of simple outdoor kitchen for Sam, who is busy designing little ideas. Not right now because he's behind the camera, but just maybe when you're watching the video, he might be designing little ideas. And so yeah, it's like kind of this will become the central point. We've got the herb garden, which is just over here, and so there's gonna be loads of colour and fragrance. So as you're cooking, you can just go and grab a bunch of whatever you need. And the only really kind of intensive growing that's going to be happening outside of the kitchen garden is here, which was the experimentals garden, but again, thinking about, part of the design is looking at what are the limitations, and I had to accept biggest limitation is time and hands. And so instead, we've extended with 3 more beds, and this is going to become our staples garden. So we're going to be growing staples here, staples such as carrots, garlic, onions, potatoes, just in one place, one staple per bed. And this this garden's going to be powered primarily by seaweed. And so what we have under the mulch here, under the cardboard, is we've put down a couple of big IKEA bags of seaweed on each bed, and that's going to be the main source of fertility here. Because another thing is our goal, and I reckon we might be able to do it this year, is essentially not need to buy compost unless it's specifically for seed saving. And I think we're kind of there already. I've been super surprised by the self-sufficiency garden. There's actually an excess of compost there, which I've never experienced before in my life. So yeah, happy days. The first place where we started this site was behind me here in the Wi-Fi garden, which will always be the Wi-Fi garden in my heart. But we're going to be changing its layout, and we're going to be turning this into a teaching space. And so I'm going to be transplanting the rhubarb and strawberries here, elsewhere, create a couple of nice benches to sit down, and use the rest of this as a nice kind of teaching, learning area. Because that's a really big thing that we're trying to focus on here, is how we can involve having people over. We do regular volunteer days. We're starting those back up again, I think in February. So if you're local to the area and you're interested, I'll put a link in the video description where you can sign up. We usually base the volunteer days around a certain project, and you get lunch by Sam. So what's not to like? And we have a lot of fun, and we have a gin bar as well. Don't remind Neil. One of the things that you might have noticed from some of the shots is that there's been a reduction in the fences. And partly the reason why we had the fences to begin with was I wasn't sure about rabbit pressure, and so I was willing to just go for it. We've taken down the fence. We can always put fences back up if we want. We can always reuse the materials. But what I'm far more interested in now is creating soft borders, soft boundaries. And so things like autumn raspberries, which I've been super inspired by when I've been visiting Penny, and how, you know, you just cut them down in autumn and then they grow back up. They fruit on that year's growth, and you can easily manage them just with a strim or with scything. So adding things like lots of autumn raspberries, creating these soft boundaries, as well as the sunchokes, to add like nice bits of vertical and to really enclose the site. That is maybe the thing that I'm most excited about this year in terms of the project, is creating as many of those soft boundaries as possible. So the chickens, at the moment, they're living in one of the polytunnels, and we're going to be moving them about to different areas next growing season. We're not going to keep them in the fruit cage. The fruit cage is now going to do what a fruit cage is born to do, be a cage to protect fruit. And we're going to be planting it with a bunch of blueberries, blue crop blueberries, and going to do just an understory of strawberries. Now, the strawberries, their main goal will be acting as ground cover. If we get some strawberries, that's great, but they just are so prolific with spreading, they might as well just go underneath and protect the blueberries. So I'm excited for that. And the polytunnel that the chickens are currently in is going to be turned into a perennial polytunnel. So there's a lot of beautiful tasting fruits, vegetables, herbs that can grow okay during the growing season, but winter is just a little bit too harsh here. But by growing them under a single layer of protection, it massively opens up the potential of all of the different crops that we can grow. And so that polytunnel is going to exist purely for a little bit of fun, to see what other flavours that we can enjoy fresh from this site. Last year we documented most of this whole site during the growing season in our Hugh's Garden Diaries series, which you can see here. And just a little shout out for my upcoming book that I co-wrote with Sam, The Self-Sufficiency Garden, based off this garden, which you can learn more about there.
It was at this point that my mic decided to die, and so thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.